moving forward to my next highest owned pickup, or that I pay the most money for, is Rico Dowdle, 10% rostered, 30 to 35%. So now we're getting to the range where this is handcuff territory. Though we talked about some handcuffs that have already started to see their value realized, but ultimately, if you don't need to start Zamir White, you don't need to start Ty Chandler, unlike McKinnon and Foreman, where I don't think those guys will absolutely wreck you if your opponent has to pick them up. Rico Dowdle, should something happen to Pollard over the next couple of weeks, he would be a low-end running back one potentially, given the high-powered nature of this Cowboy offense. Last week out, 12 carries, 46 yards, and a touchdown. Those were all season highs in terms of snaps, 30% carries, 39% carry share here, and he finished as the running back 19. In fact, he does have now 4 games of 12 or more PPR points on the season. But of course, you're picking it up not because you want to plug in Rico Dowdle in the second string role. If something happens to Pollard, we're talking about the number one scoring offense, 39.7 points in their last 3, 32.3 points per game on the season, 29 run plays per game, 9th, a top 3 offensive line. And Pollard right now is 5th in carries, 9th in targets, and that's just tons of opportunity should something happen to him. And Rico Dowdle's really flashed when he's been given the opportunity. In fact, his efficiency numbers are better than Tony Pollard on the season. The schedule, mediocre. Buffalo, 14th most points. Miami, 20th most points. And then Detroit in the championship, only the 27th most points allowed to running backs. So not a slam dunk schedule, but still in this offense, I don't think the schedule matters all that much. The touchdown opportunities are plentiful. So I think Rico Dowdle is a top 3 pickup to stash on your bench. But somebody I like even more than him is Chase Brown, who's really emerged these last 2 weeks. Let's talk about the insane upside this guy has. Now, Zach Taylor came out just 2 weeks ago saying we need to go get Chase Brown more involved this weekend, and he stayed true to his word. 30% of the rush attempts and 27% of the rush share since making those comments. And then last week, more importantly, 30% of the routes and 13% targets for Chase Brown, and he did all the damage in the world with that small workload. He had 25 yards on the ground, nothing crazy, but 80 yards on his 3 catches this last week, including a touchdown in which he hit 22 miles per hour. Chase Brown was the second fastest play for a ball carrier all season. Only DK Metcalf has a faster time. They've knocked out the insane Miami Dolphins of Devon Achane and Tyreek Hill just dominating the leaderboard. Well, Chase Brown has now jumped up to second. And now I get it. You're not going to pay all this fab just because you got a guy that's fast, but we're seeing playmaking ability for a guy whose role is getting elevated in offense that is really playing well despite losing Joe Burrow. So ultimately, this, similar to Rico Dowdle, seems like a handcuff with some very real, even more real benefits than what we have for Rico Dowdle, particularly if this receiving role continues to go up here for Chase Brown. And should something happen to Joe Mixon across these last couple games, I could really see Chase Brown going down and being a stretch run hero. He gets Minnesota, 28 points allowed, 2 backs, not great in week 15, but then Pittsburgh and Kansas City, 2 mediocre middle-of-the-road matchups, in particular Pittsburgh, a top 12 matchup for running backs in week 16. Should Joe Mixon miss any time, or if we just see this role continue to get elevated, we could be talking about a flex play there in your semifinals. Either way, another one of those guys that I don't want to be on the receiving end. Should my opponent play him and he rips off a 60-yard touchdown, I would be crying. So at minimum, a guy you don't want to face, but certainly someone you might be able to plug in to lineups. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.